أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So we have been going through questions. We are almost completely done. The first page is totally done, other than why interest is haram. But Adwa said we studied this before. So but we should go to the territory of Rida. Why is it haram? And then there were some other questions here. There was this original sin that we decided to study some topic related to that. I guess the way it came was, since this was questions from Christian friends, then there was the idea of original sin, because like non-Muslim friends, they have this notion of original sin. And then we don't know what it means. So what does Islam say about it? Because apparently we have the same story. Like Adam alayhi salam still eats from the same tree, but we don't call it original sin. They call it original sin. We can also talk about that. But I was just trying to come up with a few questions as we were messaging with Dua. So sins, isn't it restricting human freedom of choice? Or what is its use? These are some unexciting questions. But let me hear if you have exciting questions about sins in general. No? No problems with sins. Everybody is super pious here. Okay, no questions.
Forgot I was actually ahead of you.
Okay. Okay, so then maybe I can ask a few questions and hopefully, inshallah, it's going to start some conversation.
Question.
Okay, go ahead.
Sins of ancestors.
Sins of ancestors, okay.
And do they play a role in my life?
Do they play a role in your life?
Because I think even in Islam, we tend to be like, oh, yeah, his ancestor was like that, like his father was like this. So of course the son is also going to be like that, or like as if sins transfer from one person to the other.
Okay, yes. I'm trying to remember when I thought about this, because was it in my dream last night or something in the morning? It was some conversation with my wife in the morning. Okay. Because this also applies to a certain nation's sins, if you take it in the larger scale. So she was referring to like a debate between two scholarly figures in Turkey, whether such and such nation is cursed or not. One scholar says no nation gets cursed. The other one says, well, here's the hadith which says that they get cursed and whatnot. So, okay, that's an interesting question.
And when COVID happened, like some scholars, or like not scholars, but like some religious figures in Pakistan were like, this is because we are sinning, the women aren't wearing proper clothes. And it's a big, like, I know because, I'm on liberal Twitter, so like they take it to be very offensive because they're like, oh, you're blaming COVID on us. So it's also like a bit of a debate now.
Okay. Okay. But that's another question. That's another question, whether if I do a mistake, are you going to be treated or punished for that mistake? But this is a slightly different question. I mean, sounds similar, but slightly different. Why do I say different? Because when your grandfather was making a mistake, you were not warned. So you didn't have the opportunity to prevent him at all. So if he did something wrong and you're being punished for that, this is a separate case. But I am doing something wrong right now, and you do not prevent me, this is a separate case.
Pakistani dramas, they like perpetuate the first myth, like they're like punishing your kid, or like someone is like, a punishment to you, you know what I mean? Like there's so many examples of Pakistani dramas where it's like karma, but like to the next generation to come back at you, type thing.
Okay.
So like I feel like Pakistani dramas support, like I'm not a fan of Pakistani dramas. I think they're very toxic. But, like
I love Pakistani.
I see. Well, that might also be a separate thing if I understand you correct. Let's say if I wronged my father, then my child wronging me. Is this the type of?
Something like that.
That's
Oh.
very Turkish.
That's very
Very good.
Something in all our cultures apparently. But like, yeah, it's not even just like kid to thing, it's like, oh, like parent, like it's not even kid to parent, it's like other types of relationship too, like it kind of comes back at you
okay.
do.
Yes.
I think it's also a bit confusing for me because sometimes like, like I'll hit my head and like immediately whenever I hit my head or I stub my toe, this thought comes to my head that, like Allah punished me for something wrong that I did. For example, if I'm like obsessing about, like, oh, like I want attention in this specific scenario, right? And I'm imagining that, like I'm somewhere and I have like, I'm very cool and whatever, right? And I stub my toe, I'll be like, astaghfirullah, that thought was wrong. And this is Allah's punishment to me. But like, I don't know that though. So like, there's a bit of a confusion between like, if something bad is happening to you, is Allah testing you because you're good, or is he punishing you because you sinned?
Okay.
Because like when you're sick, like sometimes people are also like, oh, like Allah tests the ones who are close to him, but then also like maybe you sinned, like it's
Maybe
confusing.
maybe both at the same time.
Yeah.
Do I get punished for an ancestor's mistake? Do I get punished for a friend's mistake? Okay, good. So it looks like the conversation immediately diverted to punishments. When there's sins, there's punishments.
Actually, also what she was saying, like also like first, like some people might think it's like a punishment, some people might think it's a test, but what if it's like to snap you out of it, you know what I mean? Like, for example, like for example, music, right? Like you're listening to music and like sometimes you listen to it so often that you're like, you don't even know you're listening to music, it's just like background noise or whatever. And then you're like, wait, I'm listening to music. And then you have like something happens where you like become conscious of the fact that you're
Mhm.
listening to music, because before it was just like blending in as background noise.
Mhm.
And then you become conscious of it and then stop doing it. Like instead of it being like a natural background noise that fits in and you don't even realize it's there.
Okay. So that thing happened to you so that you become conscious of what's going on.
Also, my question is, what even is sin, right? Because when I think of sin, I'm thinking, oh, like something is haram and I deliberately eat it, right? Like if it's pork and I'm like, I feel like pepperoni today and I eat it, right? Obviously, like sin. But what if like, like, what if I should donate to a good cause, but I don't donate because I'm like, I'm being stingy or I'm, guarding my money,
Mhm.
or like not something that's exactly haram, but something that is not a good practice.
Okay. What is sin? Okay. That's a more general question because the punishment can come after talking about what does it mean to break a rule. And sin is, I guess, more like breaking a rule. But what sort of a rule are we breaking? And I guess this question, oops, isn't it restricting human freedom of choice, comes right after. If we say what is sin, and if we define it as breaking a rule, then right after comes, like, isn't it restricting human freedom of choice? The answer is, of course it is.
Yes.
So, what is sin? Safa, well, you don't have any problems with sins, but like just answer it for those sinners,
I
Oh,
don't have a good response.
okay, we have a lawyer there.
I think it's like breaking God's law.
Breaking God's law. Yeah. So for breaking a law,
It's like the equivalent of a crime, but like, like the crime is human law, so I guess sin would be God's law.
so that's good. And God's law. What is God's law? When we say God's law, what comes to your mind? don't eat pork, don't drink alcohol. What else?
Like to answer my own question, then it's not exactly like, oh, like if it's like you're encouraged to smile at people, right? Like it's good practice, be nice to people. But if I'm like not nice to you and I'm talking to you in like a kind of a rude tone, yeah, it's not a good thing, but it's not exactly breaking God's law. So I think the law has been very clearly stated in the Quran and then through the Sunnah. And yeah, I think it's just like deliberately, and you also know that you are doing something wrong.
Okay. So Zara is suggesting Surah Araf verse 33. Would you like to copy paste it to here, Zara, as you're in the meeting? Okay. So sin, breaking God's law. Like if I drink poison, is this a sin? Like it's law of God saying, if you drink poison, I will kill you. So, and he also said to give me that feeling that preserved this life. Drinking poison is actually saying that I'm going to break your law. And jumping from a tall building. Like the creator says, I set the law. If you jump, I'll kill you. And you say, well, let me see if you can. Okay, would you mind copy pasting the Arabic as well? Or let me copy, look at it. Araf 33, you said, right? Walaikum salam.
Thinking of the 7 deadly sins of Christianity, and I mean they have like gluttony, so it doesn't necessarily breaking God's law. Because you can eat however much you want to, but it's
Keep going. What were you getting with that? What you saying?
just that like in Christianity, I don't think they're just saying, like just God's law is what it is in the Quran.
Okay. Okay, so like these are set rules that we sometimes break against. Like even jumping from a tall building, it's not written anywhere that do not jump from a tall building, but it's written within the creation itself that the creator says, if you jump, I will kill you. Don't jump. But if you still go against it and jump, he says, okay, I will punish you with either death or with an injury. And some of the laws are written like this. قُلْ إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ رَبِّيَ الْفَوَاحِشَ. So harrama here is just forbidden. Indeed, going to extreme fawahish ma ظهر منها وما بطن. So whatever is explicit or hidden, concealed, implicit. والإثم والبغي.
What's the Arabic for sin?
إثم
Is
والإثم والبغي. The operation بغير الحق. Operation بغير الحق, without truth. وأن تشركوا بالله ما لم ينزل به سلطانا, and ascribing partners upon which the Creator did not give any authority. بأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون, and talking about God things that you do not know about. So these are prohibited or forbidden. So I mean, Quran talks about, if you go and Google ithm in Quran, it's going to give many examples around just this word ithm. Since Zara's question was, what is ithm? We can go and search for how Quran describes ithm, because Quran says this is a big ithm in many places. But overall, I would like to bring our attention to what does it mean to break the law of the Creator? Because smiling to someone, you are instructed as a baby, for example, baby is instructed to, like, if you smile to the child smiles you back. So this is already hardwired in you. The Creator says, this is how I would like you to behave. And if I go against this law, this rule, how do I feel? Like if you mistreat someone, do you get punished? Because it is breaking of a law. I need to act nice towards some person, but then for whatever reason, I go against this and I don't behave as such. So this is why I think the sin in general can be studied widely. It is breaking the law. But if we would like to go specific with the law that is set by the word of God and with the practice of the messenger, then we come to the point again of the question which we didn't study last week. Why is interest forbidden? Because this is the exact question that they say in Quran. They say, well, interest is, they say the trade is like interest. That's the verse. They say trade is like interest. But the verse continues, but God made trade halal, but interest haram, like forbade interest. But he made trading permissible. As if the idea is, he says, the two might look similar to you, but since I said one is permissible, it's permissible. And since I said the other one is not permissible, the other one is not permissible. Yes.
Wouldn't that be because like trade is like it implies that it's between two equal things? Like it's a fair exchange of two items or things or services versus like interest is beyond what you actually borrowed. So it's not an equal trade, and that causes you to have debt, and then debt is a form of slavery. And why should you be indebted to someone that isn't God?
Mhm. I mean, we can and we should find for wisdom within why it is forbidden, searching for wisdom. But beyond wisdom, why it is a sin? Because this is how the law is set. Does it sound too pious when I say as such? Like I am prioritizing the command aspect over the wisdom aspect. Let me give another example for that. Eating pork is forbidden. And if we try to say why it is forbidden, and we say, well, because porks are dirty. Let's say, if somebody comes and says, oh, there is a lot of research where the pork meat is this harmful, that harmful, and whatnot. This is why it is forbidden. This is wrong. Like that approach could be a wisdom, a support for understanding the creator's message behind it, but this is not the reason for not eating pork. Not eating pork is because the owner of the pork said, don't eat it. That's it. Does this sound very old school, or does it make sense to you?
You mentioned it in a football once, or someone mentioned it. No, Mufti mentioned it in a football once. Like, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before that. So like, I've heard that. But it just, you know, you do it because that's what it said.
And what does it sound like? I would like to hear, what does it sound like to you? Like in this age, I feel like we would like to prioritize if a doctor comes here and says, I did research in pork, and this are the harms of pork, and this is why Quran is doing it. Yeah, I mean, this mufti here and there, they say this is the command of God, so follow it. Come on, here is the reason. It sounds more scientific, more shiny. So which one sounds more shiny and interesting, or which one would make you more enthusiastic not to eat pork? It's medical reasoning or it's command of God?
I think it depends on the conviction. Because before the medical thing would make more sense to me. Like before I even started tafsir classes, but because after like 2 years of like tafsir classes, the second one seems. I think it depends on the conviction.
Yeah, because in one it sounds like I am doing it for health benefits, and even if I don't believe in God, still I would go with not eating pork. So even in this case, if I avoided pork, do I benefit from it? It sounds like you are taking my class and I give an assignment, and student is not enrolled to the class, yet does my assignment to get some personal benefit. But that's not going to count towards their degree if I would like to make it in a formal way, right? I mean, you can attend the class and whatnot, but you're not getting the degree. If I benefit, the real benefit, this was not the perfect example though. If I do not eat pork just because of its health benefits, if it is this much valuable, not eating pork because the owner of pork said don't eat it is much more valuable of a message in there for me. Because the health benefits is I will die within 60, 70 years at most. But not eating pork because the owner of pork told me not to touch it is an eternal message. Because by not eating it, now I am declaring who the owner is. I mean, since Muslims do not eat pork and do not have a desire to eat pork, that might be a very easy example. But let's say not looking at things that we are not supposed to look at. This is something like summer is coming, it's everywhere. Not looking at it because the owner of my eyes, as well as the owner of that other body over there, said you cannot do this. This is a very strong message. When you are lowering your gaze now, you are being conscious of owner of your eyes and owner of your sight. This is a very strong reminder. You had a comment there. I postponed it so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's also in line with what we've been talking about, Samina Badana. And I read it in a different context in Surah Nur, where God is saying that, you know, when these people come to me and come to the Prophet so that he may judge between them, the believers say, we heard and we obeyed. And I think it's very telling of like the first step for a believer, for anyone who has Iman, is that, you know, yeah, of course, use your akal and whatnot. But the first thing is, as long as you are sure that it is the messenger of Allah that has said something, and that it is Allah that has said something, that's where it ends. We heard and we obeyed. And then the rest, the, you know, intellectual part of it can come after that. But as long as you are sure that it is coming from the God, that should be that too.
Yeah, because there's this conviction being practiced. This is the means where you are practicing your conviction. And it sounds so generic of a meaning, because I remember mentioning this to a person who was, for the sake of exploring, who was saying that what is the meaning behind this? What is the meaning behind this? And when I emphasized that, well, because it's a command, he said, well, this is a very generic meaning. Yes, it's a very generic meaning. And the same generic meaning applies to not eating pork, not looking at something that I'm not supposed to look at, not reaching towards something. The main reason is the same for all of them, because it's commanded so. But it doesn't feel the same when I do not look at something, when do I not reach out to something, because they're all different application domains. And for example, it's perfectly easy for me not to reach out to alcohol, perfectly easy for me not to reach out to pork, but not the same for other things. So that generic meaning are all different application domains for La ilaha illallah, actually. And this is what it boils down to. So sinning, this is why sinning is actually going against La ilaha illallah. This is the sin. Sin in its essence is breaking the La ilaha illallah. This is why a few weeks ago on our Friday discussion, when we were studying Ayyub alayhi salam. No, Yunus alayhi salam. No, it was Ayyub alayhi salam. When we were studying Ayyub alayhi salam, the author was saying that in every sin, there is a path to unbelief. In every sin, there's a path to unbelief. And his justification for this one was, he gave 3 examples in there. He said, let's say, daily prayers, 5 daily prayers. A person who is negligent in his daily prayers, when goes late to his work, and then his boss shouts at him, "Why are you late? How irresponsible you are," and whatnot. Then this person will immediately remember, I have been late or neglectful towards my duty to my creator. If only creator didn't exist. If only prayer was not mandatory. Because now my boss standing there and I have to be there for getting my paycheck. And now he is chastising me for being late. If daily prayers is a must, then I am in bigger trouble. How can I get out of this trouble? Well, somebody comes and says, you know what? You don't need to pray. Actually, it was just a mythology. Prayer is not mandatory. Actually, this happened to when I was in high school. This was 2001 or something. In the news, we heard that some American group, like a cult type of a group, cloned a baby. And they called the baby's name as Eve, indicating that Adam and Eve, we are creating human beings. Like this was their, this was the notion. They were as if challenging God, saying that we can create human too. And in the morning, my friend, one of my friends who were trying to be an atheist back then, he said, Yusuf, all the prayers you prayed has gone for no good. Like you have been praying for nothing. Now you realize there's no God. This is the idea. If I am neglectful about my prayers, if somebody comes and gives me a clue which might indicate there's no God, I will cling to it as if it's a perfect proof. A small sin led me to my disbelief. So there's a path from each sin to a disbelief, because the gist of a sin is I am breaking the law of the Creator. So I will now have an incentive. I can have an incentive to deny God, because I don't want to be, what's it? Burdened, but I forgot the word.
Accountable.
Somebody who did wrong. There's a single word for that.
Blame.
Yeah, I don't want to be blameworthy. Human doesn't want to be blameworthy. We want to feel that I am a good person. I'm not a bad person. But I neglected my prayer. Then if prayer is a must, I am a bad person in this respect. Either I need to fix myself or I need to get rid of the prayer. Right? So this is how every sin is a path to unbelief. So sin in this case is, yes, in general terms, it is the laws of the Creator. Those laws are within the creation. Those laws are also within the speech of God and the practice of the Prophet. But why they are there for? What's the purpose of them? We can answer this very quickly and pass to the next question. Why is there such a thing like the laws? What's the point?
I would have to go to the original sin for this.
Okay.
Because I think for me, it's very much about, like human fitra. So it's like, Adam was in paradise and Adam signifies, like mankind. So we could be in paradise, but what's the issue? The issue is that we don't know what our boundaries are, because we are created in a way that, God has given us curiosity. God has given us potential that isn't bounded, or so we think. So we don't understand what our boundaries are, and there is this thing in us that, like keeps wanting to go towards bad or, cross those limits. And that's exactly what Adam did. So, Satan comes to Adam and he whispers, like, oh, if you eat this, you will like live forever or whatever. And he made a mistake. I think in Islam, like people, we don't want to call it a sin. We want, like, especially in the Tafsir class, we've been calling it a mistake, but I mean, I don't mind. He sinned, okay? And God punished him. And then this life for him was that training so that he can live in paradise again. So it's almost like before we get to paradise, like that is the end goal. But before we go there, there is something we have to learn. So it's sort of like, preschool. So before your kid goes to the school, he has to go to preschool, so he learns what is right and what is wrong, so that, there isn't chaos over there. So for me, it's like that. So yeah, it is normal to sin, and we will tend towards sins, but we will learn through punishment and through revelation, what is good and what is bad. I see your children and I see them running around, and I remember my childhood, because, we were all like that. And I remember when I was young, like, we used to fall off the stairs. Like, I've fallen off the stairs quite a bit, but it's been really long since I fell off the stairs, or since I fell in general. And it's because I learned from all that falling that, it's that I should be patient. When I'm walking, I should be calm, I should be careful. So I think over time we just like learn our boundaries, and yeah.
Boundaries, do they have to be there? Why? Like, why do we have boundaries in the first place then? Like, it's okay. Like, if sin is there to learn our boundaries, but there's an assumption that we should have boundaries. Why should we have boundaries? Just let me free, God. Go ahead.
Because having boundaries is very much attached to being owned. If you don't have boundaries, you don't have an owner. But if you do have boundaries, that means there is someone who is nigran over you. Like, there's someone who's watching over you and who's telling you what to do and what not to do.
Okay.
Also, like, I think we always want more. I think you keep using the example of you in a house, he has so much wealth, but he wants more and more. And so I feel like if anything like too much or too little of anything is like, or being on polar opposite sides of two extremes, like, it's just too much. So it's for our own good.
I mean, definitely we have this desire for no limits. Like, human has desire for no limits. Yet we are put with many boundaries, like physical boundaries. For example, I'm now in this room. I'm not in my home for right now. I'm physically constrained by space and time, among many other things. But why? Yeah.
Without the boundaries, how would we know Allah? Like, if I told you, actually, professor, I'm a professor too, say no way, right? I say, I keep telling you a year, I'm a professor too. You don't believe me, of course. Then let's say one day I get on stage, I give a talk or whatever, and this person walks up, says, oh yes, this is my teacher, this is my student. Then you say, oh, I believe that, right? So in the same way, like, I guess in coming to the Adam thing, like, okay, Adam knows Allah, but does he really know? But then when there's this sin and he's kind of taken away from that place, then he can be grateful for it. So it's both to know Allah and to be grateful. Like, if someone cut off my hand, I don't have my hand, I'm miserable, but then I'm given it back, I'm ecstatic. And then I understand what this hand is for and why it's so useful. So in the same way, like, that's why sins exist, because then the day of judgment can exist. And then through the day of judgment, we can understand like Allah's power. Because otherwise I say, okay, Allah's power. No one understands what that means. Having like that authority, like, he has to kind of show his authority, because we were created not to just like accept it. Like, we're not angels. Angels just accept Allah's authority. You don't have to tell them Allah's most powerful. They just know it. But we are created in a way like we have to be presented evidence, and then it's our choice to accept it or not. Like in the same professor example, again, I was a professor all along. I'm not actually, but you didn't believe because you didn't have evidence. That's like kind of how humans are. So that's my perspective.
So far says you cannot know God if there was no limits. Am I reading it right?
Unless he gave it to you like the angels, but we were not. We knew God according to like the Kalam or theology or whatever, and then we like that part was erased from us, and we're now born as humans on earth. But so I guess we knew God at one point, like all humans did, but now we're being tested.
So let's think about it. Practically speaking, I mean, that was a good answer, but let's try to make sure we understand that answer. So how would I know something that doesn't have any boundary. Let me give an example. Imagine you are in a room and it's perfectly light. Okay? There's no dark spot. Would you be able to identify light in such a room?
It's all lights, but
It's all
you
light.
can't tell. There's no depth, there's no.
You cannot even say there's light.
It's like something someone said where like you won't know light without darkness, you won't know sadness without happiness. But you need something like that's the polar opposite to compare
Yeah.
it to.
This is how we learn. Human learns by comparison. Like the absolute is unknowable to us unless we have some sort of a boundary drawn somewhere. Because by definition, what does absolute mean? Unlimited. But you cannot know unlimited because it's undefined, unshaped in any sense. I need a boundary, a hypothetical boundary at least, to say that, oh, this is mine, up to here is mine, and from here is his. Like I put a boundary. Let's say power of God. You are given a power, which is within your territory, you can do this much, that much, right? But the Creator says, do not exert that power over your child. He puts a limit there. But through this limited power in which you are allowed, you get to experience what it means to be strong. With this knowledge, you will say that, oh, as I am functioning in this body, somebody is taking care of the whole universe. He must be so powerful. Like through my limited experience of power, I start getting to know how great, powerful of the Creator must be. Then I step back and say, well, was it my power in the first place, really? I thought it was my power. Comparing how the universe is being maintained, I said he must be so much more powerful. Then I came back and look at myself. Well, even this power was not mine. Even this power was his. So technically, I sinned initially because I claimed ownership over this small power, but it was useful for me to realize that he was the all-powerful one. Does this make sense? Like how making that mistake was inherent for human creation. This is what story of Adam alayhi salam tells us. Making that mistake is inherent for human creation. But repentance is expected from us. You will make mistake, but repentance is where your choice going to come into play. This is when learning happens. Of course, you wouldn't do mistakes knowingly, deliberately, but you will make mistakes here and there. But you will be instructed and realize that it's a mistake. This is where your real choice now comes into play. Are you going to step back and repent, or are you going to insist on that problem? This is when sin happens. Not repenting is the real sin in there. Adam alayhi salam's mistake was not a sin. If he didn't repent, it would have been a sin though. It was a mistake that he was meant to do as a human being. Human is meant to make mistakes. But choosing to repent was the right thing to do. This is why we don't call the mistakes of prophets as sin, because he didn't really sin in there. Sin would have been something that you deliberately go against.
So, probably there's this one narration that on the day of judgment, people would go to different prophets and ask them to intercede on their behalf, and then they would mention sins that they've committed. So, for example, Prophet Noah prayed for the destruction of his people. So he would mention that Prophet Ibrahim he lied against Allah in the sense that he called the sun Allah and then he called the moon Allah, like unknowingly, but he called that a sin. And when Musa killed someone, and like so the different prophets would mention like things that they've done and reasons why they can't intercede on our behalf. So what's the how do we think of that? Because they themselves call it reasons why their intercession might not be accepted.
So, like for the case of Prophet Muhammad والسلام, we know that he was making repentance, astaghfirullah, 70 times a day. Would we say Prophet was a sinner? So what we consider as sin and what Prophet would consider for himself as something that he could have done better is separate things. So if we are imagining belief of a person to be just perfect from the beginning, then that means there's no progress for that person. You're progressing in your life in terms of your iman, right? Were the prophets not progressing in their iman for their life? Like they are prophets and that's it. Like in a scale of 0 to 1, they got 1. At the moment they got prophethood, and for the rest of their life they don't have a journey. Or as, for example, for Prophet, who he himself was the first recipient of Quran. Like you study Quran, Prophet studied Quran for 23 years too. Quran was being revealed to him before anybody else. Quran has been his journey of improvement in Iman. Relative to yesterday, today, Prophet's Iman is better. So when he says, Astaghfirullah, that would mean, oh, I didn't notice this yesterday. I passed by this sign of the Creator without noticing it. But with this new verse, now I'm able to observe it. So he himself would consider his yesterday worse than his today. This would be his istighfar. So it's a separate istighfar than yours and mine's. So let's not mix the two. So Prophet's mistake in this sense is no mistake like yours and mine. So this is why we wouldn't, like, them naming it as such is within their standards, but within our standards, it's not a sin. Like, because I personally take a lot of lessons from Ibrahim alayhi salam saying, this is my Rabb, this is my Rabb, this is my Rabb. Actually, it is my methodology. I take it as an example for myself. Consider, is this my God? Like, is my boss my God? Is my salary my God? I should ask these questions. That's what I am learning from Ibrahim alayhi salam. Because if it was something totally wrong, Quran wouldn't give us it as an example. If it's something to be avoided altogether, like if I tell you that, you know what, once I made such and such bad of a sin, and I start telling you about my sin, my horrible past, what would you say? Shut up. Don't depict your bad days to me. I don't want to hear them, you would say. Quran is depicting those pictures to us. So there is a wisdom in there. So this is why prophets' sins are, like, they're not sins in this sense.
So could it be said that for case of Prophet, where he prayed for the destruction of his people, we as Muslims should not pray for the destruction of people like Zionists or stuff like that? Like, could it be like, for example, like, could we say, instead of like asking for their destruction, we should just, like, I don't know, like pray for them to come to Islam?
I mean,
Because I don't, it's very hard like to see what they're doing and not pray that they also suffer. Because like, imagine the case of Prophet Noah, where he's been with them for like almost 1,000 years. Like, for 20 years is enough to piss someone off enough, right? But for almost 1,000 years to be given the same message, like you would understand why. But after that, he still sought forgiveness for seeking destruction of his people.
Yeah.
So could we, like, would you see based off of that, we shouldn't like seek for the destruction of people?
well, this is what Prophet did when he was at Ta'if. Like, people stoned him in Ta'if, but he prayed for their guidance. And those people who stoned them, I mean, maybe they were a few rulers, they were stoning them. And we are getting angry with the people of Ta'if for a few of the rulers. And even there could be some people who are just, like, especially today, with the propaganda language, right? Maybe if I put enough effort, I can manipulate you to go and act in a way that's totally nonsense. But if you just listen to me and I keep pumping you the wrong message enough number of times, you become a blind believer and defender of that. But you would like in your sanity that a more sane person comes and shakes you and says that, no, brother, that's wrong, right? So you are not really worthy of being, in this case, asked for destruction. But if you are that ruler, despite being addressed by the messenger multiple times, still you are not, you keep being the bad person you are, then after many invitations, Prophet did pray for destruction of certain leaders of Mecca. But after certain, too many invitations to the leaders though, not to the people. So these are the distinctions that we need to draw there. And we should take these lessons from prophets. So, yes, a sin is restricting, well, rules are definitely restricting human freedom, but this is how we get to know the Creator. Otherwise, you cannot know. Just look at, I mean, I'm not talking about just going and buying in like some kalam conclusions. Those kalam conclusions are due to who you are, what you are. So if I tell you something about your phone, and if I say, well, if you press this, the voice goes down, it doesn't go down because I said it. Just give it a try. You see that its voice is going down if you press this, right? Same way, you cannot learn without boundaries. Human cannot know the absolute, the Creator, without boundaries. Yes.
But I would also say, like, it's not restricting freedom of choice in the way that we know it today. Because, like, when we think of like freedom of choice or like restricting it, we think of, you know, like if a kid doesn't want to pray, and you know he's old enough, like the parents are just whacking him or like, you know, like grounding him. It isn't like that. Or like when countries, for example, France, for example, banned the hijab. We think of it like that, but that's not really what God is doing. You know, it's not like for every sin that you have, like there is a thunderbolt striking you. It's a very, I want to use the word organic sort of change that God is encouraging. And it's like, you know, the revelation comes and first you find God through all of these signs. It's a journey. And then when you do find him, then, you know, you have revelation to tell you what's right and what's wrong. And then when you don't do something, there is guilt there.
Mhm.
So it's not like, you know, like you're getting beaten up for like every sin that you're doing. It's sort of like an internal encouragement that is pushing you towards making the right choice. So even in that way, I wouldn't, like, yes, of course, it's restricting your freedom of choice, but not in the way that we understand it.
Yeah. Like imagine you are thrown into a sea of knowledge. Would you learn anything? Practical. I'm asking now not so much of a theoretical question, but practically. You are thrown into university starting as an undecided. You are in need of certain departments, which draws boundary of this is what computer science means. And here are the boundaries of computer science. And these are the courses you need to take. Here's the study plan for you. And here's civil engineering. Here is law school. Boundaries, we learn within boundaries. I mean, this is a practical example. What I said previously was the theoretical basis of it. So the boundaries in here is when the Creator says, oh, you're not going to eat this, you're not going to touch this, you're not going to look at this. It is teaching me. It's like a curriculum with which I get to learn my Creator. And if I fail following them, as you said, he starts giving me alarms. I get 80 from one assignment. I get 0 from another one because I didn't submit. These are small. Then I get a midterm. Now it's being a little more shaky. I missed the final. I get an F. My GPA starts giving alarm. So depending on my mistake and depending on how important of a student I am, because it sometimes happens that I have students which are sitting, like I don't even notice that they're in the classroom. They're not careful students. Like if they don't submit an assignment, another assignment, like I don't even notice the student in there. Probably I will notice the name of the student when I'm giving F at the end of the term. But then there are those students who are at the very front row, and I do the class with them. As I say something, I'm looking at their eyes. Did the guy understand? Back and forth questions, right? If that student submits it one day late, I send an email to student and say, what's up, what's going wrong? Now, this student might feel like, oh, I am being punished. The teacher is chastising me for just submitting it one day late. But the other guy who is not even attentive to the class, not being warned until getting an F. So yes, it's a punishment, yet it's a support. So whenever you are receiving some sort of a, let's say, what could be considered as a punishment, it is a punishment, yes. But at the same time, it's the mercy of the Creator, right? They're saying that, wake up. This is why at such moments, I should say, what did I do wrong so that I am not being corrected by my Creator? I am being asked to wake up. So for your question about this, whether it's good or bad, it's both at the same time. And to quickly go through, do I get punished for an ancestor's mistake? I think no way. Because I was not there to affect my grandfather's mistake. Like he was trying, let's say, he butchered innocent people, my great-grandfather. I was not there to prevent him. So, and I didn't choose to be his offspring either. So it doesn't make any sense, nor does it comply with the justice of the Creator that I observe in this existence. So it doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
I've heard that about like scholars saying that like the verse in Quran that everyone's accountable for what they don't do. I'm butchering what translation of it, but everyone's accountable for what they don't do. That's for like the hereafter. But in the earth, people are inheritors of other people's sins. You know, like if you drop a bomb on someone else's country, it has impact, and those kids grow up in that they didn't do anything wrong to get that, right? But like in the world, it's different. It's not.
So in this case, I would say, what do we understand from punishment? Like, is this a punishment of that person? Because I think the punishment happens between me and my Creator. Like if you are born in a poor family, and let's say your great-grandfather was a lazy guy, are you being punished by God, you, who is born into a poor family, although you are a very hardworking person, are you being punished by the Creator because of your great-grandfather? If you are thinking about it from a worldly perspective, and the success in the world is defined by dollars, sure. But is this the case? What I would consider as a punishment is, in this life, what I would consider real punishment is, my great-grandfather was an atheist, and now I am being an atheist because of that. That I would consider a punishment. But is this the case is my question.
That's your choice. It's not punishment.
You are being given a choice.
That's what the jihad perspective, like I do with my tribe does, that's
Yeah. So in this life, because we had that question again in high school during my turmoil times, a friend of mine challenged our religion teacher, saying that, you say God is just? How about the child born in Jerusalem? Says, I am born in a Muslim family in Turkey. He is born in a Jewish family in Jerusalem. So we are both children, innocent, right? Per your religion. So how about this child who was born in Jerusalem? How is your just God is acting justly? If that child is not given the choice to find the truth, that would be unjust. That would be a punishment of that's coming down from ancestors, which should shake us actually, because now we are on the flip side of it. Because I tend to think that since I'm born in a Muslim family, I am a Muslim. Double check for yourself, no matter what level of Islamic education you have gone so far. How much are you convinced about La ilaha illallah, and how much do you live by it? Because if you were born in this Muslim family, how much is it yours? Because you cannot inherit somebody else's faith. I mean, this is not Muslim thing, right? Inheriting your parents' faith.
The rest of the world.
It's a separate thing. Well, this is how it's supposed to be for another religion.
But
You are-
there's many Muslims that are like that, like they're only Muslims because they're in Muslim family.
Yeah, what that means then is it's not our identity which is what matters. You should live by your conviction. So your identity should become, your conviction should become your identity for sure. But having an outward identity doesn't save me. Having a shell doesn't save me. As we said at the beginning, having just the interior and no shell doesn't save me either. Both has to be there. I made this mistake once. Once I went to a a synagogue, a Jewish temple. We were making it it was an exchange program with some there is a rabbinical college in Philadelphia, and they asked for Muslim mentors for their students. They were taking some comparative religions class, and they reached out to Penn and Drexel for MSA to come up with TAs that can help with them. So I was matched with one person from rabbinical college. So he attended my Quran study, and he was doing Sunday school in there. And I went to their Sunday school, and I said, well, what he said, go and talk. And they were middle school, high school kids. I said, what can I talk to these kids? I said, well, since both are Abrahamic religions, let's talk about oneness of God, la ilaha illallah. So I guess this would have been the common ground, I thought. That was a surprise for me. I didn't know that aspect of Judaism back then. I mean, that type of Judaism. So I went there and I was talking to the kids and saying that La ilaha illallah, there's no God but God, and you cannot inherit your mother's and father's conclusion. It has to be your own conclusion, and like oneness of God is what it is. And I talked about it as we have been discussing in the discussions about the causality and whatnot. Then my rabbi friend had to correct me at the end. So I made this half an hour of talk and whatnot, and it was back and forth questions with the kids. Then my friend said that, okay, kids, now that, like, he respectfully listened and he didn't interfere with what I was saying. But at the end he said, kids, you don't have to believe in God to be a Jew. That's what he said. This was news for me because I didn't know that this was the case. But then I realized when I came back home, what did I say? Like, you cannot inherit faith from your parents? Well, these kids are, their identity is inherited from their parents. So, but this was a wake-up call for myself. Is it the same for you as a Muslim? Like, you're Muslim because your parents are Muslim? We are famously saying that, oh, Jews, your mother needs to be a Jew so that you become a Jew and whatnot. Okay, let's say it's a official rule for them, for some of them, not all of them. But do I take it the same for being a Muslim? I'm a Muslim because this is how I have seen. So I should check for myself. There is no injustice in that. Whomever is born in Jerusalem or Rome or in Mecca, everybody needs to bear witness in La ilaha illallah. Without witnessing, if I claim it to be so, it doesn't help. So I do not get punished for an ancestor's mistake, but I do get punished for another person's mistake that I can prevent. Yeah.
Actually, I have a question for that. So, like, as far as I'm concerned, I believe in Allah and I'm happy with my Muslim faith. And I would like to say I have Iman, but then when I hear this, that, like, everyone should try to find God on their own, separate from what their parents have told them. Like, I mean, yeah, the reason why I got into Islam was because of my parents. The reason why I know most about Islam compared to other religions is because my parents had it. But then my question is, does that mean that I should also, read the Bible or read the Torah to try to see, because from people's perspective, from a Christian child's perspective, like they have iman in Jesus, right? Like, because that's what they've believed all their life, and they pray to Jesus and they get good things in their life. So they're like, oh, Jesus has blessed us. So, and then we blame them because we're like, oh, like you had the choice, you could have found God, but you didn't, and we're also kind of like conceited about it. Um, but then shouldn't that also mean that I should read the Bible and I should read the Torah? And this is something that I wanted to do, but more recently, I just don't feel the need to. I feel like I'll be wasting my time, and I feel like I should just research Islam first. So it's kind of like a double standard.
So today, for a Muslim, our religion is not Islam. Our religion is worldly life for everybody across the board, for a Jew, for a Christian, for a Muslim, for an atheist, for everybody. And if my Islam is as much of religion of a Christian, yes, you're right. We are equal, really equal in this sense. But what we learn before anything else today is not Quran or Islam. What we are learning is just sciences, I would say, or worldly life. Things happen by themselves. This becomes our religion today. On top of that, we wear our religion like a culture. A Christian wears their religion as a culture on top of that, same with the Jews. So do I need to read Bible and this and that? No, really, first read Quran, but your basis is not Quran. Your basis is things happen by themselves. This is our norm. This is our religion. Across the board, you might be born into a super religious family. I claim the same. This is your norm. If you go through the secular education, this is your norm. I have been coming from a religious family. I have seen many people coming from really religious families. I claim the same. You might be a Hafiz, you might be this and that. My conviction doesn't change. I am so sure about that. You need to, in this case, really study Bible if you like, not Islam, but Bible, but try to make sense of this. It happens by itself mentality, or it happens because of gravity mentality. Laws make it. DNA makes it. This is our worldview, right? I have blue eyes because my parents have blue eyes. This is, if you think about it, as a nonsensical statement, yet we believe by that. Challenge that belief with, okay, go and study Bible. Sure. Bible is not going to answer that question. And you should be bothered by that. Quran will answer that question. And then you would say, now I am convinced about it. So you being born into a Muslim family just gave you an environment. That's all it is. You have to, what it gave you, despite what you wouldn't like, is this worldly life of it happens by itself and there's no God. This is our norm in today's society. I was talking to a brother, he would say, oh, Pakistan is a Islam Republic of Islam and things are different in Pakistan and whatnot. I said, tell me about the university students in Pakistan. Don't tell me about the villagers and shepherds in distant sides of Pakistan who doesn't have access to secular education. And I don't know if there are such people left anyways, with the cell phones and everything. Everybody has access to that. How about in the universities, I said? How many people are praying? It's all the same across the board. People are not believing in God in practice. This is a very bold claim, a very disturbing claim, as if I'm being judgmental about people's faith and whatnot. I don't care about people are believing or not believing for judging them. I am caring about this because it's a darkness for the person himself, herself, and it hurts. If you would like to get saved from this darkness, this is where you will fix it. So I don't think there's a distinction. This is why I would be very, sympathetic towards a Christian child or a Jewish child who is trying to seek truth in their own religion. I very respect that. And if they do this with earnest intent, I believe Creator will support them. He does support them. And if I see a Christian child studying Bible and starting to feel uncomfortable with it, that's again the mercy of the Creator that discomfort is coming in there. Same applies with a Muslim, by the way. If a Muslim student starts reading Quran, studies Quran, the way that it is being taught by certain religious circles, and denies Quran for that reason, I am sympathetic to this child too. Because you cannot understand Quran the way that that specific type is trying to teach you. So the world is not black and white. It's not simply, oh, you have to accept Quran this way. No way. I mean, we are, as Muslim community at large, have very big problems that we need to face for ourselves before pointing fingers at others, before saying that, oh, Jews are doing it like this, Christians are doing it like that. What are we doing? We did what Jews did to their religion, to Quran, what Christians did to Bible, to Quran. We did this. Some of us, not all of us. This is why still this religion is standing. But some of us still do that. What Jews did to their prophets, let's make sure we are not doing the same. Whenever I read the stories of Jews in Quran, there he mentions, they did this and that to their prophets. I need to ask the question, what did I do to my prophet? Where is he in my life? They killed their prophets. Is prophet alive in my life? Or did I kill the prophet too? We have to ask those questions. If we honestly ask those questions, we will realize that we are not in a good shape. So, I mean, sorry to depict a not so nice of a picture, but I think this is our reality.
I have like, I'm thinking also something similar, how like people have cognitive dissonances with their religion. Like I find it very difficult to be like a Muslim who's like studied like in school, like an engineering degree where you study lots of sciences. And then with that knowledge, you read the Quran or the Bible or any of these books, and you have like, it's like you have cognitive dissonance because like one is saying one thing and another one is saying, for example, in Suratul Kahf, where it talks about people that were in a cave for 309 years, like how did they survive? Or like the part of the Quran where it says, Jara Shams al Diya and we made the moon be light. But we know that the moon is not a source of light, it reflects. So it's like, or different things in the Quran, like how you have those things, but then because you've been to school and you've studied everything, it's very difficult to have the same iman as someone who's like in his village his entire life and has like never been to any college or anything, like who's like raised by the shepherd. Like obviously they would have more iman than we do. Or like, and then I also tried to read the Bible, and it didn't make any sense to me either, because like from the first page, it was talking about how God created day and night on the first day, but then on the fourth day he created the sun. So how did the sun come before day? Or like the plants were on the third day, so how were the plants growing? So it's like all the religions, it's not just Christianity, like Judaism, like every single religion, like it's impossible. I don't know, but like how do you manage being a college student who's gone through, like you studied the sciences, and then the book is still, okay, for example, where the Quran talks about the moon splitting. How come like if the moon splits, it should only be in Mecca that they actually just saying in like India and like Africa and like everyone else just like the moon is like in the sky, everyone sees the moon. Like what happens to the tides of the ocean? Because the moon just not, so like what happened? Were there like tsunamis everywhere? So like how do you become a Muslim? And you have to believe all these things that the Quran is saying because you're a Muslim.
Yeah.
But then you know what the scientists say.
Yeah.
And then you basically like have to like,
you have to close your eyes, or you have to open your eyes, right? We try to close our eyes in such cases because we take science as the ground truth, unquestionable truth. So we close our eyes and pretend as if we didn't hear, we didn't see, because we don't want to lose our quote unquote iman. But I would suggest the exact opposite. No, open your eyes and see, does moon reflect light? How does it do that? Because Quran says, we made it bring light to you. Oh, I thought it was natural for a surface to reflect light. Question your scientific knowledge in the first place then. Is it natural for a surface to reflect light? Like Quran could very well have said that it is us who brought Nur from the table. Like in the Ja'ala Nura from Qamar, right?
Yeah.
Forget about Qamar. We Ja'ala Nur from the table. Your scientific knowledge says, no, it's not God who brings light from the table. It's light itself which it travels, right? Which one is true? You have to question both sides, right? Quran's claim is that I make the light to reflect from there. Science says, no, light reflects by itself based on this and this and that formula. If you are willing to be having iman, meaning being sure and being convinced, you have to explore. You cannot simply buy the word. You cannot simply say, yeah, God creates everything. It doesn't mean anything. That sentence doesn't mean anything after a certain point. It's good until you graduate from secondary school, maybe, first year of high school. From there on, it's not going to help you in this education system. That's why we need to refresh that iman in there. All the things that you mentioned, there must exist and there does exist answers. And those answers are not trying to close some gap, patchwork. It's not patchwork. It is the truth itself, if you dig them.
Because I was studying, one of my atheist friends really gave me an homework, and I'm still trying to find the answer. So basically, he told me like, can anything go faster than the speed of light? And from science, we know that nothing can go faster than the speed of light, right? Because it's like, if anything was going faster than the speed of light, then the effects would happen before the cause, right? If I was going to punch you faster than the speed of light, then you start feeling the pain before I even move my hand. That's impossible, right? So how did the Prophet, and our universe is like 13 point something billion light years, 13 point something light years long. The Prophet traveled through 7 heavens in one night.
These are all assumptions. Like all your answers are based on different assumptions. I'm inviting you to question your assumptions. Because you are speaking from 5th layer of meaning. I think I need to fix first layer. We have problems at the first layer, which we think is perfectly fine. We have problems right there. And there's a cascaded problem all the way. And we start realizing that, it doesn't add up when it comes to the 5th layer. Actually, it didn't add up since the first layer. We need to get there. But we need to be courageous for that, because I need to admit to myself that I was fooling myself so far. Or if you would like to be a little softer toward yourself, what I considered as a conviction so far is not helping me that much anymore. So I need to refine it. Let's put it this way so that it's not as disturbing. You're too much up to time, but Safa, you had something to say there? You forgot? Okay, let's stop here. Inshallah, subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Wa akhiru da'wahum alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.